Don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. I still remember that evening like it was yesterday. It had been a long week, the kind where the days blurred together into an endless cycle of meetings, emails, and deadlines. By Friday, I was exhausted, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. So when my boss Ben suggested we grab a drink after work, I figured it would be a welcome break. I never imagined that night would change everything. I had worked with Ben for years, but we'd never really hung out outside of the office. He was always the polished professional type, his business suit always pressed to perfection, his hair neatly combed at 45. I was a few years older than him, but I had always respected Ben for his quiet confidence and sharp mind. He was approachable, but never the type to share personal details. That was the first thing that felt different that night. We met at a small quiet bar near the office, the kind of place where you could have a conversation without shouting over the noise of other patrons. The dim lighting hung in the air, thick with the scent of aged whiskey and leather. A few other people dotted the tables, but it wasn't crowded, just the kind of place for a relaxed drink. I ordered a glass of red wine, and Ben went for his usual, a whiskey, neat. As we clinked glasses, I could feel a slight tension between us. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was unfamiliar. I had never seen Ben like this before, slightly less formal, a little more laid back. It was almost as if we were two people who had known each other for years, but were just beginning to realize how much we had in common. We started with small talk, nothing too deep, work, the weather, the usual pleasantries. But then, after a few drinks, I noticed something in his eyes, an almost imperceptible flicker of hesitation, like he was deciding whether or not to say something. I could feel the change in the air, the way the conversation shifted from casual to something else. It wasn't just about work anymore. Something was coming, something I couldn't quite place. Ben took a slow sip of his whiskey. Then, out of nowhere, he looked at me directly. "You ever wonder, Grace," he said, using my first name for the first time, "if we're really doing what we're meant to be doing?" I stared at him, a little caught off guard. Ben wasn't one to get philosophical. In fact, I couldn't remember a time when he'd ever let his guard down like this. His question lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. The low hum of the bar seemed to fade away as I tried to process what he was asking. "What do you mean?" I asked, leaning forward slightly. Curiosity piqued. Ben sighed, his eyes searching mine like he was looking for something he wasn't sure he'd find. "I don't know," he said slowly, almost to himself. "I've been thinking about it a lot lately, about how we get so caught up in the grind. The promotions, the numbers, the constant push to be better. But at the end of the day, do any of us really feel fulfilled?" His words hit me harder than I expected. I knew exactly what he meant. I had felt the same way for months, maybe even years. It wasn't that I didn't love my job. I did, but something had been missing. The passion I once had for my work had faded, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why. Maybe it was the constant pressure, or maybe it was the feeling of being stuck in a loop, going through the motions without any real sense of purpose. I was about to say something in response, but Ben raised his hand, silencing me. "But that's not even the craziest part," he continued, his voice dropping lower, almost as if he was afraid someone might overhear him. "What if I told you that the only reason I even got this job, this whole career, isn't because I was the best candidate? What if I told you it's because someone helped me get here, someone who changed everything for me?" The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. His eyes darkened, and I could see that the weight of whatever secret he was about to share was pressing down on him. There was something behind his words that hinted at a deeper story, one that had been buried for a long time. I leaned in closer, my heart beating a little faster. "Who?" I asked softly, almost afraid to hear the answer. Ben paused, his fingers tapping nervously against his glass. It's someone you know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Someone you've worked with for years." My mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. Who could it be? A colleague? Another boss? a mentor. I had worked with so many people over the years, but no one had ever stood out in such a way that would make me think they were responsible for Ben's success in such a personal way. The silence stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity. I was on the edge of my seat, waiting for him to continue, but he just sat there, looking at me with a mix of fear and anticipation. Finally, he spoke again, his voice shaking slightly. "It was you, Grace. You are the reason I'm here." My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't believe what he had just said. I sat back in my chair, trying to process his words. "What? What do you mean, Ben?" My voice came out shaky, though I tried to sound composed. Was he joking? Was this some kind of twisted prank? But the look in his eyes told me he wasn't joking. Ben's gaze didn't leave mine, and for the first time, I saw him vulnerable, really vulnerable. It wasn't the professional mask he usually wore, the one that kept everyone at arm's length. This was a Ben who was exposed, raw, like he was revealing a secret he had carried for years. He took another slow sip of his whiskey, the glass trembling slightly in his hand. Then he set it down and leaned forward. "Grace, when I first started here, I was just another guy looking for a break. I didn't know what I was doing. Honestly, I was barely getting by, trying to keep my head above water in this cutthroat world of corporate politics. I was still in shock, but my curiosity had taken over. So what does this have to do with me? I don't understand," I said, almost pleading. Ben exhaled deeply, as if he had to gather the strength to say the next part. "You were always the one who believed in me. I remember the first project I worked on with you. Everyone else was dismissive, but you were the only one who gave me the time of day. You didn't treat me like a nobody. You helped me when no one else did. I'll never forget that, Grace. You gave me the confidence to keep going when I felt like quitting. And you've done it time and time again, without even realizing it." My heart skipped a beat. I had never thought of myself as someone who could make that kind of impact. Sure, I had helped colleagues along the way, but I never imagined that my actions could have been so meaningful to someone like Ben, someone who was always so composed, so in control. "Ben, I began, but he held up a hand to stop me. "I know you're probably shocked, Grace. Hell, I was too when I realized it. But it's true. Every time I wanted to give up, every time I doubted myself, you were there. You were the one who kept me grounded, kept me believing that I had something to offer this company." His voice wavered slightly, and he quickly cleared his throat. "I owe you more than you'll ever know." I didn't know what to say. The words felt inadequate, and I could feel my cheeks flushing. "Ben, you don't have to," I started, but again he cut me off. "No, Grace, you need to hear this." His voice was firm now, as though he had made a decision. "You've always been there for me, and I've never thanked you properly. I've always kept this part of me hidden, because honestly, I didn't want anyone to think I was weak, but I can't keep pretending anymore." I was stunned into silence. I had no idea what he meant by all of this, or why he was telling me. Now, the bar felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker, like I was wrapped in a heavy blanket of emotions. I didn't know how to navigate this. But there was something about the way he looked at me, something raw, something desperate that made me want to listen. Ben leaned back in his chair, his fingers running through his hair. "The truth is, Grace, I'm not the man you think I am. Everything I've done to get ahead, to make my mark here, wasn't because I was smarter or more capable. It was because of you. Your faith in me gave me the strength I needed to move forward." I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. "Ben, this is too much. You don't owe me anything," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to remain calm. But Ben shook his head. "I do, and I need you to understand something." He paused, searching my eyes with a quiet intensity. "I don't think I've ever told you how much you mean to me, not just as a colleague, but as a person. You've been a guiding force in my life, and I've always felt this connection with you, something deeper than just work." The words hung in the air, heavy and full of meaning. For the first time, I saw Ben in a completely different light, not just as my boss, but as a man who had been silently carrying his own burdens. There was a vulnerability in him that I had never noticed before, and in that moment, I felt a surge of emotion I hadn't expected. Was this something more than just gratitude? Was there something between us that had always been unspoken? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Ben, I didn't know. I never thought you saw me that way, I said, my voice soft but clear. He looked down at his glass for a moment, then back up at me, his eyes searching mine with a mixture of uncertainty and longing. I know I've always kept my distance, kept things professional, but now that I'm saying this, I can't help but wonder, what if we could be more than just colleagues? What if there was something more between us? I felt my heart race. His words had taken me completely off guard, and I wasn't sure how to respond. The idea of mixing personal feelings with work had always felt like a dangerous territory. And yet there was something about the way Ben was looking at me that made me question everything I had thought about him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The noise of the bar seemed to fade into the background. As we sat there, both of us caught in the tension of the moment. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, and I knew I was blushing, but I couldn't help it. There was something stir inside me, something that told me this was a turning point. Finally, I whispered, I don't know, Ben. This is a lot to take in, but I'm glad you told me. I meant it. I was glad. But it wasn't just the truth about our work dynamic that had stunned me. It was the way his words had opened something I wasn't ready to confront. A part of me had always respected him, but now I wasn't sure where that respect ended and where something else began. Ben gave a small, almost relieved smile. I understand, Grace. I didn't expect you to have all the answers right away, but I needed you to know you've been the one constant in my life, and no matter what happens, I'll always be grateful for you. The weight of Ben's words lingered in the air long after he had finished speaking. I sat there trying to absorb it all. My heart was racing, and yet I felt strangely calm, as though the storm of emotion swirling inside me had finally found some semblance of order. The bar around us buzzed with activity, the clinking of glasses and low chatter continuing as if nothing had changed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my whole world had shifted. Ben didn't speak for a while, and neither did I. The silence between us was heavy, almost suffocating, yet there was a certain comfort in it. It wasn't awkward. It was as if we were both standing on the edge of something new, something unknown, and neither of us wanted to rush into it. Finally, Ben broke the silence, his voice soft but steady. Grace, I didn't expect that to come out the way it did. I didn't want to complicate things, but I just couldn't keep pretending anymore. I had to be honest with you. I nodded slowly, my mind racing with conflicting thoughts. He had been honest with me, yes, but it was hard to process everything at once. The Ben I had known for years, the confident, ambitious man who always seemed to have everything together, was suddenly this vulnerable, open version of himself. I had never seen him like this, and it made me wonder, had I been blind all these years? Had I missed the signs that there was more beneath the surface? I appreciate your honesty, Ben, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. I really do, but this is a lot to take in, you know. I know, he replied, his eyes never leaving mine. I didn't expect it to be easy. Hell, I wasn't sure how you'd react, but I've been holding this in for too long, and I needed you to know. I needed you to understand how much you've meant to me, how much you still do. The sincerity in his voice made my heart ache. I had always respected Ben, even admired him for his drive and ambition. But now in this moment, I was seeing him in a way I never had before. There was no arrogance, no bravado, just a man who was grappling with his own emotions just like anyone else. You're right, I said, my voice steadier. Now, this is a lot, but it's also kind of beautiful, Ben, the way you're being so honest with me. I never expected this conversation to go in this direction, but I'm glad it did. Ben smiled, a faint hint of relief in his expression. I'm glad you're not angry. I just wanted to make sure you knew how I felt before it was too late. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my own racing thoughts. I didn't know what to make of this new dynamic between us, but there was a part of me that was intrigued, curious about where this could lead. Could I trust my feelings? Was this just a passing moment, or was there something more here? Ben, I don't know what happens next. I said, choosing my words carefully, but I think it's important that we take our time. There's no rush to figure everything out right now. He nodded, his gaze softening. I agree. I'm not expecting anything from you, Grace. I just wanted you to know the truth. What you do with it is up to you. His words were a relief. They gave me the space I needed to process everything, without feeling pressure to make a decision. It wasn't that I didn't feel something between us. It was undeniable, but I needed time to figure out what it meant, and I needed to be sure that whatever path we took, it wouldn't jeopardize everything I had worked so hard for. I'm glad you told me, Ben. I said, my voice quiet but resolute. And I'll need some time to think about all of this. But I do want you to know that I respect you. I always have. The sincerity in his eyes was almost overwhelming. I respect you too, Grace, more than you'll ever know. For a moment, we just sat there, the weight of our words hanging between us. The tension that had been building throughout the night was still present, but now it felt more like an unspoken understanding. A quiet acknowledgement that we had crossed a threshold together. There was no rush, no pressure, just the recognition that this moment had changed something between us, and we both needed time to figure out what it meant. Ben took a deep breath, and for the first time all evening, he seemed to relax. Thank you for listening, he said, his voice lighter now, as if a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. I don't know what I was expecting, but I'm glad you didn't shut me out. I wouldn't do that to you, Ben, I said softly. You've always been a good boss, and I value our relationship, whatever it is. He smiled, and there was a genuine warmth in it, something that hadn't been there before, at least not in the same way. I'm glad to hear that, Grace. I really am. We sat in comfortable silence for a while longer. The tension between us, slowly dissipating. The bar around us, seemed to fade into the background. And for a brief moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. It was a strange, surreal feeling, like we were standing on the edge of something new and uncertain, but also exciting in its own way. As the night wore on, we finished our drinks in quiet companionship. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but there was an unspoken understanding between us now, something that was both comforting and unsettling at the same time. I didn't know where this would lead, but for the first time, I felt a sense of clarity. Whatever happened next, I knew it wouldn't be the same as it had been before, and maybe that was a good thing. The weeks that fall of that night with Ben felt like a strange mix of clarity and confusion. The tension between us had shifted, but it hadn't disappeared entirely. Every interaction at work was now laced with a subtle undercurrent, like a quiet hum in the background, that we both felt but didn't always acknowledge. Ben had been respectful, giving me the space I needed, but it was clear that things had changed between us. And as much as I tried to ignore it, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something new, something that neither of us had anticipated. But then one morning, as I walked into the office, I found myself face to face with Ben in the hallway. He was standing there looking as calm and collected as ever, but I could see something in his eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. Grace, he said, his voice warm but serious. Can we talk for a minute? I felt my heart skip a beat. There was no avoiding it. Now, the moment I had been putting off had finally arrived. I nodded silently, following him to his office, my mind racing. What was he going to say? What did this all mean? Once we were inside, Ben shut the door behind us, and for a brief moment, there was a heavy silence. He sat behind his desk, gesturing for me to take a seat across from him. The air between us felt thick with unspoken words, but this time I wasn't afraid. There was a sense of calm in me now, a quiet certainty that had settled over me ever since that night at the bar. Grace, Ben began, his tone steady, but with a trace of vulnerability. I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us, about everything I told you, and I just want to make sure that we are on the same page. I know this is a complicated situation, but I don't want to lose what we have, whether it's as colleagues or something more. I met his gaze, taking a deep breath. His words were sincere, but I could sense the uncertainty beneath them. He was just as unsure of the future as I was, and that gave me some comfort. It wasn't just me who was navigating this unknown territory. I've been thinking a lot too, Ben, I said, my voice up but firm. And I've realized something important. What you told me, that wasn't just a confession. It was a turning point for both of us. But that doesn't mean we need to rush into anything.